What is going on, y'all? Welcome. What is good? It's Woog. We are going to talk some boxing. I'm just making sure that we got a good feed going. I want to make sure that audio's good, video's good. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss. I mean, obviously, we're going to be talking some Garcia versus Haney. It was billed as Haney versus Garcia, but Garcia being the winner. We're going to talk the aftermath of all that. We're going to get a little bit into some of the controversies involved. There's obviously this might end up being the story of 2024. I mean, this was such a dramatic event, and we're going to get into the different, some of the nuances around a lot of the conversations. Whether we're talking about the weight, whether we're talking about the 1.5 around the bet, just weight bullies in general. There's a lot to kind of unpack with this one, and yeah, we're going to certainly dive into some of that. So yeah, let me know if there's anything good or bad in terms of the video, audio. I want to make sure we're solid. Let me see. Did I drop? Are we good? 1 second. I think we're still solid. I'm just kind of seeing. 1 second. So what did I just do? Let's see. Check. Well, yeah, let me know because I want to get access to this chat. I think that I either pressed something that dropped me off the chat or I'm still on the chat and just think that I'm off the chat, but I can't see the chat right now. So just give me a second. We'll work through this. And I'll try my best to kind of talk through it too. Let's see. Yeah, okay. I think we're still live. Check. Okay. I'm just going to ask you guys in the chat if you guys can hear me okay before we get into it. So I'm going to proceed as if I'm audible. And if I'm not audible, then let me know and we'll correct. Franco H is in the house. Son of Apollo, what's going on? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Caesar, what's going on? Yeah, we're rocking and rolling, man. Just a second, like I saw all these like different screens that are like a part of the YouTube studio, and they were screens that I wasn't familiar with, and I'm like, man, am I even still on this live? And so I started clicking around, and I feel like the more I started clicking around, the more it was sending me to just like basically acting like it was changing my configuration. So I'm like, am I even still on this thing? But yeah, we're rocking and rolling. So yeah, let's go. Some of what we're going to discuss, obviously, Haney versus Garcia aftermath. We're going to talk about that crazy Saudi card. I don't know if you saw this, but on August 3rd in Los Angeles, the Riyadh season is coming to the West Coast, and I've got to think long and hard on whether I'm going to try to make it to this fight. It's Terrence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov. Israel Madrimov just beat Kurbanov on that AJ versus Ngannou undercard. So Madrimov became the 154 WBA champion, and that's what Crawford is going to be challenging him for on this Saudi card. So not only will he be challenging for that WBA 154 title, but it's also going to be for the interim WBO title. Because remember, Crawford is the 147. Just, he's vacating that, going to 154. Him having the WBO champ status at 147 allows him to go up and challenge at 154. So if he beats Madrimov, he'll be the WBA champ. He will be the WBO champ or WBO interim champ, which will give him basically next up. Maybe not for Sebastian Fundora's immediate next fight, or it might be because we're going to get into this too. But Tim Tszyu versus Virgil Ortiz Jr., it sounds like they're close to making that one a done deal for August 3rd. Obviously, Virgil Ortiz fights this weekend against Thomas Delorme, a former pretty good 140 pounder. Then at 147, you might have remembered he recently got stopped in the first round by Boots Ennis. He kind of got hit upside the near back of the head. It was a little bit controversial, but Boots got him out of there pretty quickly. Delorme was once one of Terrence Crawford's victims at 140. So I look at Delorme as being way past his prime. I don't expect Vergil to have too much trouble, but if they make this Tim Tszyu versus Vergil Ortiz Jr. fight, I'll be pretty surprised because I would have expected Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy to take their time a little bit more, given all of the health concerns and everything Vergil Ortiz has been through over the past couple of years, health-wise, that have kept him out of the ring. I thought they would have moved him along more gradually, being that now he's up a division at 154. The only guy Vergil's fought at 154 was Fred Lawson, and that was the guy who was reported to have or rumored to have had some sort of a brain aneurysm. It was something brain-related that tested out on the brain scans, and the reporting was that they then went to get a second opinion on Fred Lawson's brain status, and Fred Lawson got in the ring. Tony Weeks was the ref. He stopped it in the first round, and then his commentary afterwards, because it didn't look like a fight that should have been stopped. Vergil, yes, started letting his hands go. Fred Lawson was blocking a lot of the punches. Maybe a few were getting through, but they stopped the fight pretty oddly. And then Tony Weeks came out and said, well, it turns out Fred Lawson has some sort of a brain issue going into, and so that ended up being controversial. And now that I think about it, I don't know if I've seen Tony Weeks reffing a big fight since. Let me know if you've seen Tony Weeks refereeing since Vergil Ortiz versus Fred Lawson. But all that to say, that's Vergil Ortiz's only opponent thus far at 154. And you're going to go from Fred Lawson and all of those health issues that have plagued your young career to go to fighting Tim Tszyu, arguably the best fighter at 154. Yes, I would have wanted to see Jermell Charlo versus Tim Tszyu, and it sounds like Jermell Charlo is going to be activating one of his champ statuses. I forgot which belt. It might be the WBC, that he can still activate his champion in recess status. So he's still at 154, but aside from maybe Jermell Charlo, Tim Tszyu's pretty much the ringer at 154. I know he lost that bloody decision to Sebastian Fundora, so Fundora's obviously got a claim to the throne. He's the champ now. But first of all, Tim Tszyu will have been returning on a tight schedule because this fight just took place a couple weeks ago. So he'd be returning to the ring in August. So that means that that cut on his head would have to have healed, and he would be taking on Vergil Ortiz Jr. So I just love that matchup. Yes, it does come with some caveats. Tim Tszyu coming, back from that bloody fight loss to Fundora. Vergil coming back from all of those health issues and really he hasn't had a lot of rounds at 154. It's just a partial round so far in his entire 154 campaign. So it might be too much too soon for young Vergil. And I look at him as being one of the most sensational young talents in all of boxing. I've thought that since I saw him totally maul Mauricio Herrera, an older Mauricio Herrera, but just the viciousness, punch for punch, that comes out of young Vergil. And then you see him in the later fights against Maurice Hooker, against Mean Machine Kavyaskis, and you see, damn, he's got a heck of a popping jab. Oh man, he just goes viciously to the body. Oh man, his game is a little bit more rounded than just a come forward vicious fighter. So, if they make this Tim Tszyu versus Vergil Ortiz Jr. fight, that would be one of the fights that I'm most excited about on the calendar. And again, that will be on the undercard for Terrence Crawford at 154, challenging Israel Madrimov, who just had that stoppage, 5th round stoppage against Kurbanov. Let's see who's in the house. James Backland's in the house. Thank you for coming through. Yes. Yeah, we chop it up a lot in the comments. I'm super glad that you made it. Hell yeah. Hot Facts with Robert Reese. Hey, yeah, what's going on, Rob? Check out his channel if you guys haven't. Hot Facts with Robert Reese. Yeah, me and Rob go back. I'm talking like teenage years back. Yeah, good to hear from you, Rob. Thanks for coming through. Big Ruck is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Upheaval 963. I'm going to get to some of what y'all are saying. So Big Ruck said definitely not, since Rowley versus the old man. In terms of, okay, so Rowley versus the old man. I'll get back to that one. Franco H said Tony Weeks also had a bad referee. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. So Raleigh versus Barroso. I see what you're saying now, Big Ruck. Yeah, Tony Weeks officiated that, and then he officiated Virgil Ortiz versus Fred Lawson. So yeah, a lot of people were thinking, hey, maybe Tony Weeks should, wrap it up career-wise after that weird stoppage. But then he also had that assignment, Virgil Ortiz versus Fred Lawson, and it was an almost equally puzzling stoppage. But then he issued that statement. I think Tony Weeks is like, oh, hell no, they ain't going to come down on me again like that. And so, it's interesting because they were both stoppage related in terms of the Tony Weeks controversy, but it's funny because he's also the guy who officiated that one of the nastiest cuts I've ever seen in the ring. It was Badu Jack when he was fighting Marcus Brown. Marcus Brown came in, headbutt Jack, split his head like down the middle, and Tony Weeks, you'll see that viral pic. It's almost meme worthy of Tony Weeks with his, shirt, his referee's shirt and gloves soaked in red. And he let that one continue. That one went the full distance. But yeah, some questionable decisions lately. But I wish that Fred Lawson, Virgil Ortiz controversy was further investigated. I didn't hear too much after that. I remember Chris Mannix was calling for an investigation and all that. But I'd be really curious as to whether he being Fred Lawson, really did test for some brain issue in the scans, because I mean, that just runs counter to any ethics that you would want in the sport of boxing. Boxing is questionable ethically as it stands. You would want them to at least have the baseline of basic fighter safety, especially if the scans are showing you an adverse or a bad result. Take those seriously. You would hope for that. Upheaval 963 said Virgil versus Kavaliauskas was a great fight. Yeah. Some people might not remember that Mean Machine had Virgil hurt a couple of times. They should have ruled that a knockdown, by the way. He got stung. He got dropped. I think they ruled it a slip. He got hurt before that, and then that happened. And then Virgil kind of felt like he had his back against the wall, just started coming in, guns blazing. Ended up dropping Mean Machine, turning the tide, dropped Mean Machine a few times en route to a mid to late round stoppage. Franco H said, Tim Tszyu is a throwback fighter. He wants all the smoke. He doesn't duck. Yeah. And you know what? Virgil Ortiz is showing the signs of being a throwback fighter as well. If he in fact signs up for this fight. Because again, I thought that they were going to kind of slow pedal him. Maybe get him in there against like somebody the caliber of Teixeira. The Teixeira that got beat by Brian Castano. That's how Castano earned the belt that he brought into the fight with Jermell Charlo. Somebody in that like ranked, 15 through 20 at 154. Again, if that Lawson fight went a few rounds, okay, then maybe you get him against somebody who's a little bit higher. Like if Jason Rosario was still fighting, I think he's retired after getting stopped by Brian Mendoza, but somebody the caliber of who did I just say? Jason Rosario or a Julian J. Rock Williams, who I believe has since moved up to like 160. Who else? Maybe Brian Mendoza, since he suffered that second consecutive brutal decision defeat against Bohachuk. Remember before that, Brian Mendoza lost that pretty tough decision against Tim Tszyu. But somebody of that caliber, I thought that they were going to bring Virgil along at 154. Now remember, he was scheduled a few times to fight Stanionis. That was a fight that I so badly wanted to see, between those two super, very young prospects / contenders. In the case of Stanionis, a lesser champ. But we didn't get that fight because of first Stanionis' health issue, then the next couple of times Virgil's health issue. So yeah, once again, I'd be really surprised if they do in fact make Tim Tszyu versus Virgil Ortiz. I'm totally here for it, but that's a tough one for Virgil. Let's see. Lee Van said, who's going to fight Boots? His career is languishing. Yeah, we're going to get into a couple languishing careers. The other languishing career we're going to get into is Andy Ruiz, who's now scheduled to fight Jarrell Big Baby Miller on that Terrence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov undercard. So the card would have Crawford versus Madrimov, Tim Tszyu versus Virgil Ortiz, if that one is in fact made official. And that is, again, contingent upon how Virgil performs this weekend against Thomas Delorme. But then they've got Isaac Pitbull Cruz versus Jose Valenzuela. Andy Ruiz versus Jarrell Big Baby Miller. And Andy Ruiz, has largely squandered his peak earning years after pulling off that sensational upset over AJ. He had that one rematch where he lost the decision to AJ, comes back several months, about a year and some change maybe later, to fight Chris Arreola. And the only fight after that he's had is against Luis Ortiz. So since beating AJ, which was 2018 or something, he's fought AJ in the rematch, he's fought Chris Arreola, and he's fought Luis Ortiz. That's it. That's pretty terrible. But yeah, okay, so to answer your question on Boots Ennis, yes, his career has largely been languishing. His longtime manager passed away a few months ago, a very esteemed trainer that passed away. And so his wife ended up taking over the managerial duties. So there was a long contract dispute, managerial, sorting that had to be worked out. And the result of that was that Boots Ennis parted ways from his longtime manager / promoter. See, a lot of people think that PBC was managing and promoting him, or even like TGB, who's like one of the main promoters under the PBC banner. But and we were led to believe that because Boots Ennis would often be fighting on Showtime on PBC cards, but he was managed separate. It was they would just work it out on a fight by fight basis to have Jerome Boots Ennis fighting on the platform. But maybe that answers the question as to why his career wasn't really pushed and advocated for by PBC. Like, if you look at PBC, they will put on cards, they will stage fights, but you don't get the feeling that there's the same stewardship for the fighter. Now, I know Al Heyman has a reputation of taking care of the fighters financially and so forth. So there is that. And PBC is arguably the best at that. But in terms of the truly navigating, okay, this is how we're going to set you up. We're going to schedule something for April or May against such and such guy. Then we're going to pivot from there and we're going to do this. Like Eddie Hearn, who's always speaking up for all of his fighters. He's the face of his promotion. That's another thing about PBC. They don't have like a real face of the promotion. Now, if you want to go under another, fighter or another promotion under the banner, Mayweather Promotions, you'll every now and then get Floyd coming out and talking. You'll get Leonard Ellerby out there representing Tank Davis or something like that. But for a lot of the other guys who fight on PBC, Gary Antoine Russell, for instance, like what the hell is happening with his career? There are a lot of guys that are fighting on the platform, but don't seem like they are being, micromanaged and handled in a way that you see, for instance, Eddie Hearn navigating his fighters' careers, or even, on the Golden Boy side, Eric Gomez and Oscar doing the talking, Eric Gomez doing the matchmaking, putting it on the DAZN platform, but it's a different level of stewardship. So Boots Ennis just signed with Matchroom. Eddie Hearn is now taking care of Boots Ennis' career. And within a week of that signing, what do I see on the DAZN platform? I see Eddie Hearn out there talking on behalf of Boots Ennis, calling him the greatest thing since sliced bread. He just goes out there and he really rides for his guys, right? So Boots Ennis, you see the way that he's lighting up when Eddie Hearn is talking about him, and it's almost like Eddie Hearn is having to talk up Boots, so Boots is invigorated by it, and you see the way that it's already having an effect. Boots is doing more interviews. He's talking about the future of his career, what his goal is for the rest of the year. So what they are currently setting up is Boots Ennis versus Cody Crowley. Cody Crowley's coming off of that win on a major PBC undercard. I forgot what the pay-per-view was. Might have been like Benavidez versus Andrade or Benavidez versus Plant. But Cody Crowley beat Abel Ramos, who's a pretty good fighter, beat Brandon Figueroa and a couple of others. Pretty good fighters. So Cody Crowley is a good fighter who has been fighting under the PBC banner. Boots Ennis just moved over to Matchroom. So they just had a purse bid for that fight, and Matchroom outbid TGB Promotions, PBC essentially, outbid them. So Boots Ennis versus Cody Crowley for Boots's IBF title is going to be on the DAZN platform. So that's what's next for Boots. So it looks like 2024 might be a very fruitful year because he fought like once in 2023 against pretty good fighter, Roman Villa, who remember beat Rashidi Ellis. So Boots fought like once in 2023. I think he fought, once in 2023. I think he fought once in 2022 against Karen, right? Chukagian not Chukagian, that's a MMA fighter, but something like that. He beat him, but it was a tough fight to watch because Karen was circling the ring a lot. And then Boots fought once in 2021 against what was that guy? It was somebody who had like no chance against Boots. So he fought once in 2021, once in 2022, once in 2023, and now he's going to be fighting in a couple of months against Cody Crowley. But Eddie Hearn said that he wants Boots to fight multiple times in 2024. So that's a good sign. Let's see. So, okay. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that Crawford versus Madrimov Saudi August 3rd undercard in LA. We're going to talk about a little bit about Tank versus Frank Martin, seemingly official. They try to drop that on Haney versus Ryan Garcia on that same fight day. You know how Mayweather used to do that back in the day. Well, I think that in this case, it kind of backfired because there wasn't a lot of attention given to Tank versus Frank Martin because Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia soaked up so much of the oxygen in the boxing community, and then the fight played out like it did. So that story, Tank versus Martin being official, kind of got buried. And the co-main event is David Benavidez versus former light heavyweight champ Alexander Gvozdyk, who took the title from Adonis Stevenson and later lost it to Artur Beterbiev, his only career loss. He has since been back for a few fights, looked pretty good. I don't know if he's 100% where he used to be, but yeah, he's going to be the next guy that David Benavidez fights, and it's going to be Benavidez's debut up at 175. Trying my hardest not to talk any Canelo Benavidez talk. I'm trying my hardest. But yeah, let's go back into the aftermath from Haney versus Garcia. But first, let me get into some of what you guys are saying. Upheaval 963 wants to see Ryan Garcia versus Teofimo Lopez. I do too. And and before Garcia versus Haney, I wanted to see Haney versus Teo. I still want to see all those guys fight each other. I want to see Tank Davis fight all those guys, but I have real doubts as to whether Tank Davis is going to fight any of these 140 guys, or in the case of Ryan, I personally don't think Ryan's ever going to compete at 140 again. But I don't see Tank Davis, as small as he is, fighting these I know he fought Mario Barrios at 140, but I don't see Tank fighting Teo at 140. I don't see him fighting Devin Haney at 140. I don't see, well, maybe after this fight, maybe he's like, okay, but I don't know. And I don't see him rematching Ryan Garcia at or above 140. And I don't see him fighting Teofimo at 140 either. But I would like to see Tank fight them all. I would like to see Teo fight them all. Yeah, Upheaval 963. Ruiz has been kind of a joke. He missed out on a lot of money, but it looks like now he's got the Saudis' attention. So he's going to be a part of that Riyadh season, the heavyweight circuit, which, Saudis they've kind of taken over the uppermost tier of the heavyweight division. And props to them. They're putting together some fantastic fight cards. Let's see. They've got some great fights on the Beterbiev versus Bivol undercard. EK said, I got it. Let's see. Oh, he said, I've got to eat the I don't know about boxing humble pie after the Ryan versus Haney results. Yeah. And like Upheaval 963, we all do. You know what I mean? A lot of people got that one wrong. A few people were saying Ryan is going to win. In fact, there were a few people, and what's up, EK? Thanks for coming through. Miami Kid J, thanks for coming through. There were a lot of people in the last chat that I had that were saying Ryan Garcia is going to beat Devin Haney. I was surprised by the amount of people that were saying that. So then I issued out a poll on YouTube, and like 20% or less were picking Ryan Garcia. So yeah, the vast majority of people had Devin Haney winning that, beating Garcia. A lot of people thought that he might stop Garcia. But we were all kind of thrown a curveball on Friday when Ryan Garcia missed weight. And I want to try to thread the needle here in, kind of riding the line, or, the balance, finding a balance between giving Ryan Garcia credit for the win, also acknowledging him missing weight and the role that very well might have played in this fight. Anybody would tell you, right, in the boxing game, the toughest pounds to lose are those last 2 to 3 pounds. Now, Ryan Garcia had a chance to try to shed those last couple pounds to make weight. He just forego, like he said, no, I ain't going to do that. I'll rather just pay up, and we could renegotiate the contract, and I'll pay up. Ryan Garcia, by the way, also reportedly put a bet on himself, more than $2 million on himself to win, and that paid handsomely. So I almost look at that $1.5 million as being like an investment that Ryan Garcia put forth to beat the hell out of Devin Haney, really. Now, he still had to go in there and execute and do what he did, and we'll get into that. But, Haney looked like he had gone through the suffering of making 140. And for those who say, well, Haney agreed to the 1.5 million, he, agreed to the bet. Yes, he did. But did he realistically have an option of pulling out of the fight? Yes, by the letter of the law. He could have said, yep, fine, fight's off. You guys deal with that. Golden Boy, match, you guys deal with that. That's not my problem. I'm not entering the ring. He missed weight. We were contracted to fight at 140. No fight. Could he have really done that? Can you imagine how not only like the fans in the boxing world, the boxing community would have come down so hard on Devin Haney, calling him a Doug, saying he ain't a warrior, saying he didn't want the smoke, whatever people were going to say. That's what he would have been faced with outside of the business practitioners of boxing. I think that he would have been denied opportunity down the line, and that he was going to have to pay for that one way or another if he chose not to let the show go on because Ryan missed weight. So yeah, technically he could have pulled out of the fight. Well, I see my dad's in the house. Thank you for coming through. And Mom, you might be watching too. Thank you. Love you guys. I don't think Haney ever had the option of truly pulling out of the fight. I think that his hand was kind of forced. Yes, he did receive some extra money. Good for him. But I wonder if he regrets agreeing to those conditions. You know what I mean? I think that it did make a difference. But, it doesn't answer the question, why did he keep on getting hit by those left hooks? Now, Ryan did look bigger than him. Ryan did look faster than him, which is interesting. I was wondering what the hand speed in the ring was going to look like. Because, look, say what you want about Ryan's mental state, his shenanigans, all that. Like, I still think that he's mentally troubled. I don't think that because he picked up the win that he just like was making all of this stuff up and just putting on a big ruse, a big show to fool us into thinking that he was, kind of out there or troubled, disturbed even. No, I think that he's still everything that I thought he might have been going into the fight. He won the fight, so that puts a Band-Aid on a lot of stuff. So a lot of people are going to say, oh no, he just outsmarted everybody. Now, I do think that there might have been some strategy in him missing weight. He's done interviews since saying, you know what? When Tank Davis fought me, or no, he said when Haney usually fights, Haney's the weight bully. Well, the bully just got bullied. So it sounds like Ryan Garcia, by design, missed weight and then went in there and did what he had to do in the ring. So, yeah, I mean, those are just kind of like look, props to Ryan for winning the fight, but it does leave a bad taste in my mouth when somebody, when we see, and I use the term somewhat loosely, when we see cheaters prosper. And the difference between Devin Haney being a weight bully and this version of what we got last weekend was that if the fight is contracted to take place at 140 and Devin Haney weighs 140 the day before the fight. Okay, rehydration, that's a different thing. So he puts on weight, right? But he still suffered to get down to the weight. Sometimes that could backfire. If you lose too much weight at the, too much weight late and then put a bunch of weight back on by the next day, we've seen it where that doesn't work well for the fighter and that it hurts their performance. So on one hand, you could accuse Devin Haney for being a weight bully, but that's rehydrating is different than breaching your contract. And then at the last minute, kind of forcing the hand to where you got to renegotiate the contract, agree to new terms, and then you get in the ring after you see that your opponent has already suffered to make the weight. But again, I was very surprised that Devin Haney got hit by that many left hooks. We're going to take a quick, I'm just going to take a quick sip. I want to get to some of what you guys are saying as well. Let's see. Miami Kid J, do you think Devin should take a soft touch like Barboza or jump in there with Teofimo or Matias? Okay, I think Devin Haney should take his mandatory challenge, Sandor Martin. That's the mandatory challenger since Haney is still the champ, which, by the way, that's not the norm. Usually when there's a champ and he gets beat and the guy misses weight, the title's vacated. I kind of like what Mauricio Suleiman and the WBC did in this case. Because this technically was not a 140 fight, you shouldn't take Devin Haney's 140 title away from him. I often take issue with WBC moves, just like I do WBA moves. But in this case, I like that Devin Haney keeps the belt because, again, he didn't get beat at 140. But to answer your question, an Arnold Barboza would be, who shouldn't have won that fight. I don't think he deserved to win. I thought that he lost a close fight. But to be fair and honest, I was kind of half watching that one. It was a lot of people. I was going out to my brother's pad, and we were a lot of family and friends. We were just chopping it up, drinking a bit, and we were just watching the fights kind of passively up until the main event. So I still haven't seen round for round that fight, but it looked like Barboza was getting controlled on the outside, that he was kind of paying for it when he would come in, and the guy was able to keep him at bay. It looked like the later rounds, the second half of the fight, was a lot more competitive, though. It looked like Barboza was able to land some cleaner shots throughout the later rounds. But Devin Haney, I don't think that he should go right into fighting Teofimo or Matias. I think that if he fights Sandor Martin and wins that fight, reassess at that point. Because here's the thing. We don't know where Devin Haney's chin is right now. We don't know where Haney's confidence is right now. So I would like to see Haney get some more, just get back in the ring. And, Sandor Martin might not be the easiest opponent, but it's not somebody who's going to run up on you and take your head off like Ryan Garcia would. So it's or Teofimo would if he gets emboldened, or some of the more dangerous opponents. Obviously, Subriel Matias, he's like a steamroller in there who just starts cooking more and more as the rounds go on. So yeah, Haney needs a less dangerous opponent. He needs to box with Sandor Martin, see how he feels taking punches. We don't know what that chin is looking like. I wouldn't be surprised if he fights Sandor Martin and there's a flash knockdown and he gets put on his butt. It maybe wins the fight via decision or something, but there's a lot. And also, he doesn't need to get back in the ring, in my opinion, within the next few months. Maybe take like 8 months off or something like that. I really think that you got to get your bearings back after a long and sustained beating like the one that he took. Now, it wasn't a round over round beating. Ryan Garcia's activity was somewhat sporadic, right? He fights in waves. In fact, after winning the first round, I thought Haney won like the next 4 rounds, maybe the next 5 rounds. And I also saw a lot of people saying, how could you come up with a draw on the scorecard? I'll tell you how. Haney losing the first, Ryan wins that. Haney winning the next 4, maybe 5. Let's say you split on those. Garcia wins the 7th. That was the first knockdown. Haney wins the 8th and maybe the 9th. At worst, Haney splits the 8th and 9th. You could give Haney both the 8th and the 9th. So you couple those two with the with the 5th and 6th rounds, plus Haney winning rounds 2 through 4. Ryan Garcia scores the knockdown in the 10th and in the 11th, but arguably gave up the 12th round by moving around, showboating, and not really engaging. He treated the 12th like he knew he had the fight in the bag. Well, if you then look at that first knockdown in the 7th round, which, could have been a 10-6 round if you count those other 2 falls. If you count one of the 2 falls, it should have been a 10-7 round. They didn't count either of those other 2 falls, and they took a point away from Ryan Garcia. So instead of like a 10-6, 10-7 round, or even a 10-8 round, it's a 9-8 round. That's how you could get, that's how, you could get Devin Haney winning that decision. Dan Rayfield, one of the most esteemed, I know people have mixed feelings about Dan Rayfield, but he's one of the most esteemed boxing writers in the game. He had Devin Haney winning on his scorecard. So I think that an array of scorecards would be understandable. But I do, boxing scoring isn't a gut feeling. It's not I'm going to watch the whole fight and see who I feel won the fight. It's not like that. It's a math problem at the end of the day. And yes, the math could, without controversy, the math could work out in Devin's favor depending on how you scored it. But I felt that Ryan deserved to get his hand raised. Just if I was watching it with a gut feeling, Ryan Garcia was giving Devin Haney hell. And I was wondering why, when he would hurt Haney, sometimes he would take his foot off the gas. I don't know if he was conserving energy. I don't know if Devin Haney was hurting him to the body, but you would see Ryan start to back up a little bit and, start taking punches and stop letting his hands go. But every time Ryan Garcia really put his foot on the gas and started throwing combinations, one of those punches, one of those hooks or straight rights would get through, hit Devin Haney upside the head, and all of a sudden Devin Haney's right back to being in big trouble or on the canvas. It was just a really fascinating fight because there were a few times that I was thinking that Devin Haney was out of the woods and it looks like Devin Haney's got this under control. Then the seventh round comes around and it's like, nope, and then 8th and the 9th work out the way that they work out. And then the 10th round happens and it's like, nope, right? Interesting fight. Let me see. I'm going to get to some more of what you guys are saying. So Franco H, I don't know if Garcia fooled us. I think that he might have strategically missed weight, but I don't know if it was one of those I faked I'm having a mental breakdown or having some mental issues. Even in the way that he conducts himself after the fight, dude, at the end of the day, he sounded convinced. I thought, and I'm saying, I'm speaking from personal, just personal experience, having, friends and, just loved ones who have dealt with different, types of issues. And if we're talking schizophrenia, for instance, when Ryan Garcia was talking about getting dragged out into the woods, being held down and forced to watch things that I'm not even going to speak on this, on this live chat, that is the type of talk. First of all, I mean, you do see talk like that in the, the underbelly of the internet, if you will. You do see some of that type of talk. Garcia sounds like he's going down some conspiratorial paths, and he sounds like he is unstable. I wouldn't be surprised if he's bipolar. I wouldn't be surprised if he's manic depressive. I wouldn't be surprised if he is schizophrenic. None of these things would surprise me. And there are different levels of severity when it comes to each of those. But I don't think that this was like a ha, joke's on you. Again, yes, he won the fight. And maybe he fooled Devin. Maybe Devin, I don't know if Devin was 100% himself. It looked like he had a bad weight cut, first of all. I don't know if Devin should be competing at 140 if he's truly having trouble performing at 140 and making the weight and performing at an optimal level. But I don't know if Devin, because you heard him talking like something's really wrong with this guy, all this stuff. Was Devin 100% himself? I also didn't like his wardrobe. What were those boots? And he looked like he was wearing heavy shorts, but a lot of fighters look like they're wearing heavy shorts. I mean, Devin, even in his fight against Regis Prograis, was wearing like some shorts that were like clearly like, like high-end designer, kind of partnerships maybe. But the way I look at it, if you're a fighter and you're concerned with anything but the fighting, you're working against yourself at that point. And again, I'm not saying that that's what's happening or what happened to Devin. I think that he was, training hard. He made the weight. But I think that if anything, Devin was fooled by taking that bet because he was going to be entering the ring with the guy who was bigger, stronger, and faster that night. I think that that's where Devin might have been fooled. Lee Van, what's up? Said Tank doesn't care about legacy. I would agree to an extent, but okay, Tank cares about money and he's, running his career the way that he and his team, his promoter are wanting to run his career. But if he wasn't, caring about legacy at all, why would he be fighting Frank Martin next? I thought that was an interesting pick. I thought that he would maybe run it back with Pitbull Cruz. I thought that he might win. I thought that he might fight somebody like Jose Valenzuela because Valenzuela has like the shine off of putting, Chris Colbert's lights out in their rematch. So I feel like PBC, what they do is if Raleigh gets a win, then Raleigh gets an A-level opponent. If Valenzuela gets a win, maybe he gets, he fights as a B-side against the cream of the crop. I kind of feel like that's some of how they handle some of their fights. Rancis Barthélemy, got a big opportunity against Gary Antoine Russell. Not that Rancis Barthélemy, had a big win leading up to that. But all that to say, I'm surprised Tank Davis chose Frank Martin. Frank Martin is a real opponent. He is, I don't know if he's A-level. We'll find out as his career unfolds. I know that he beat Jackson Mariñez badly. I know that he beat, who else did he beat? Let me see. He beat somebody else and looked really impressive. And it was against a pretty good fighter. Let me look it up real quick. So there was the Frank Martin versus Jackson Mariñez fight. He had knocked Romero Duno out just before that. Michel Rivera, the Ali lookalike. Yeah, he looked really good. He won the vast majority of the rounds and put Michel Rivera on the canvas. Michel Rivera has since gone up to 140 and beaten Sergey Lipinets. So Frank Martin is a good fighter. Yes, he looked unspectacular in his last fight against Artem Harutyunyan. Harutyunyan, by the way, who Frank Martin needed to dig deep and win that 12th round bad. I think he might have dropped him in the last round, and that kind of salvaged the scorecard. He won a close unanimous decision against Harutyunyan. That Harutyunyan is going to be, I believe, Shakur Stevenson's next opponent. Not ideal. Nobody's asking for Shakur Stevenson versus Harutyunyan, but it's clear Shakur Stevenson is having difficulty getting a meaningful opponent in the ring with him. But yeah, Gervonta Davis, his fight-by-fight schedule has been one of the most frustrating to witness in boxing, especially for like a high-level fighter, right? Like we wanted to see him fight some of the other cream of the crop, but every opponent that they select, you have to kind of like convince yourself to get a little bit excited about it. Like Mario Barrios, okay, I guess that could be interesting. Leo Santa Cruz, yeah, that one was kind of exciting and interesting because like nobody put Santa Cruz's lights out. This is going to be tough because I feel like Tank's going to have his hands full if he doesn't get the knockout against Leo Santa Cruz. And he had his hands full and then knocked out Leo Santa Cruz. But then like, Raleigh Romero, it's like, I want to see Raleigh fight like somebody else who's like in, maybe like a lower end of the top 20 of the division type of an opponent. Not Tank Davis. Raleigh don't need to be in there with Tank. And yes, I think Raleigh did better than I thought he was going to do against Tank. Isaac Cruz, that was like a kind of an interesting one because we thought maybe Isaac Cruz could be pretty good. But again, when they made that matchup, remember, Isaac Cruz was a late replacement for Raleigh Romero, who was having legal issues at the time. So they replaced Raleigh with Pitbull Cruz, and that's how we got that one. So that was another one where you had to kind of like warm up to the idea. And then like Hector Garcia, a pretty good 130 fighter. I know he lost his title to Lamont Roach, but you're making Hector Garcia, who, yes, beat Chris Colbert, but is going up to 135 to fight Tank. There's always like some caveat. Even the Ryan Garcia with the rehydration clause. Exciting opponent. I love the matchup, but then the weight shenanigans kind of, muddy that one up a little bit. There's always some trickery going on with Tank Davis matchmaking. I'm just glad that Tank versus Frank Martin, as far as I know, doesn't have any rehydration clause, doesn't have any catch weight, no type of funny business. So this is probably like the most like, damn, okay, Tank, one of the top 3, I would say, in Tank's career thus far. Let's see. Cesar said, Ryan Garcia is unprofessional, not making weight. He would have been champion. But could he have made 140? Because if you think about it, his last fight versus, there was the one against his 140 debut against Oscar Duarte. But before that, there were weight issues where, he fought Emmanuel Tego up above 135, catch weight, fought Javier Fortuna, a former 126-pound champ, above 135. Ryan Garcia can't professionally weigh in he did it against Tank, and in that fight, Tank was kind of pulling the strings and calling the shots. So to Ryan's credit, he did that and paid for it, in my view. But how can you schedule a Ryan Garcia fight going forward for a belt, especially if it's at 140, if Ryan Garcia can't be relied upon to make the weight? He's almost kind of like becoming like the new Adrian Broner, when it's almost expected that he's going to have some weight issue. Let's see. By the way, right before Ryan Garcia put hands on Devin Haney, people were saying like, he's starting to look like the new, Adrian Broner. I saw a couple other comparisons just in terms of fighters who kind of act unprofessionally or seem like they have mental hangups that are stopping them from being at their best. Victor Ortiz was one of them, not Virgil, Victor Ortiz. And then I was thinking like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Like if that fight was a debacle, if Ryan Garcia didn't perform well against Devin Haney and miss weight and had that weird, bizarre lead up to the fight, I would feel like he was kind of going down that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. path. And he still might. Again, I still have the same curiosities and concerns about what's going on, you know what I mean, with Ryan Garcia. But again, winning a fight of that magnitude puts a big Band-Aid on any sort of a perceived issue. And now you see Bernard Hopkins and Oscar De La Hoya, who were barely on speaking terms with Ryan Garcia in his last fight against Duarte. Now they've got their arm around him like, yeah, that's our guy. And they're shouting down the press, the Chris Mannixes and the Timothy Bradleys, the former fighters who are now a part of the media, Chris Algieri, Malinaji, Bradley, and so forth. They're shouting them down on behalf of their guy now, Ryan Garcia. Whereas before they were like doing interviews, kind of, putting some shade on Ryan Garcia. Let's see. I want to get to some of what you guys are saying. James Backleg said Ryan made a decision, knew it would cost him money, and made him ineligible to win the belt. It was the right decision. History won't remember he missed weight. Exactly. History won't remember that there were a lot of weight shenanigans with the Floyd Mayweather versus Juan Manuel Marquez fight. If you look at the box rec and the history of that fight, look at what was done and the last minute weight change that went on with that one. But yeah, it might have been a calculated decision. And if it was, that's unfortunate. You know what I mean? David Eiser's in the house. Thank you for coming through. Yeah, so Crawford versus Madrimov. We were talking a little bit about that incredible fight card with Tim Tszyu versus Vergil Ortiz. It looks like that one's brewing on the undercard of Crawford versus Madrimov. But I think that's it. Yeah, Madrimov beat Kurbanov. He's a pretty good fighter. Crawford is going up a division, And Crawford is going to be 37 in September. This could be dangerous. Like, if you think about it, when Floyd Mayweather, and I'm only mentioning Floyd because Floyd is almost like the quintessential. Look, I know Bernard Hopkins fought until he was 51. He beat a lot of good fighters in his 40s. But Floyd, for the lower weight classes, took care of his body about as well as you could, like Terrence Crawford, and fought until his late 30s, close to 40. When Floyd was 37, he was about to get in the ring against Marcos Maidana for the first time. So that's where Floyd was at 37. Can Crawford up a division beat Madrimov if he's in the Floyd versus Maidana 1 stage of his career? That's assuming he ages in the ring like Floyd. You know, Floyd beat Canelo famously at 36. I think he fought Pacquiao like at 38, or was it 38 or 39, somewhere up there. So Floyd aged about as well as you could age as a lower division fighter, relatively lower division, anywhere between 135 and 154, right? You don't get better aging than Floyd down there. Manny Pacquiao aged pretty well as well, but I mean, they did. Anyway, we could talk Floyd against Manny later, but they both aged really well. Manny beat Keith Thurman at like 40 years old. So all that to say, I think that Madrimov is a sneaky, dangerous opponent for Terrence Crawford. I'm gonna, do some deeper dives. I mean, I watched some Madrimov, a couple Madrimov fights before the Kurbanov fight. He's a good fighter overall. Terrence Crawford, you would think, what's his reputation? High IQ, very adaptable, very reactive. You would think that he's got enough acumen to handle this one. But sometimes fighters age like this. Other times fighters age like this. I don't think that's going to be the case with Crawford. I think it's going to be rather gradual. But again, he's up a division. This guy's naturally going to be, I think he's going to be significantly bigger. But, every time I think that with Crawford, once he enters the ring, he looks like a bigger fighter than I thought he was going to look. The whole conversation with him against Spence was going to be the bigger guy. He's the more established body at 147. He's the one who's been making his rounds at 147. So Crawford's going to be fighting a slightly bigger Spence. When they were in the ring together, Spence didn't look like the bigger fighter. I wouldn't be totally surprised if Crawford doesn't look like the smaller fighter once he's in there with Madrimov. Crawford's listed usually at around 5'8" and a half, right? 5'8", 5'9", somewhere between there. Madrimov is listed at 5'8" and a half. Madrimov's reach, I believe, is 68 inches. Crawford has a 74-inch reach. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if Crawford looks the part when he gets in the ring with Madrimov. We'll see if all of his skills and all the tools that he had at 147, including power, are transferable to 154. But also, so if he beats Madrimov, I said this at the top of the hour, if he beats Madrimov, that not only secures the WBA title because Madrimov is a WBA champ after beating Kurbanov for the vacant belt, but that would also make Terrence Crawford the interim WBO 154-pound champion. So he would basically be in line to fight Sebastian Fundora. Let's see. Big Surge is in the house. Thank you for coming through. He said, I'm no fan of Ryan, but I did pick him to win. I tried to bet 100 on him, but I didn't know I couldn't bet in California. I don't know why people were sleeping on him after if he was knocking other fighters out. They were sleeping. Well, okay. First of all, with the odds, the way that they were, Haney at a minus 800, like an 8-1 favorite. I saw him as high as like a 9-1 favorite. The betting odds were so heavily skewed. And I think I said this in the lead up to the fight. They were super skewed because of Ryan's behavior leading into the fight. So when you see something that might be an issue, but might not be as big an issue as the changing betting lines are making it out to be, you might want to put money on the other side of the seesaw, if you will. So if you see that people are putting too much on, hey, well, Ryan's not even, together. He's missing weight. He's shadowboxing his girlfriend and not, working out enough with Derek James, all these different things. He's not ready for Haney. Haney's like the perfect student. He's like the straight A student who's like just focused and doing everything right, eating right, taking care of himself, making weight. This is a easy money fight for Devin Haney. Well, if the odds are going to start reflecting that, and then you start forgetting about, well, wait a second, Ryan's a little bit bigger than Haney. Wait a second, Ryan's got hands that are as fast, if not faster than Haney's. And we know that Ryan Garcia puts punches together and, has vicious knockout power. If we forget about that and start focusing too much on the behavior, that is what I think kind of did this to the betting odds. So whoever pounced on that on the Ryan side, props to them. By the way, Ryan didn't fight Haney like he fought Javier Fortuna. I've seen Ryan fight in ways that are busier, where he's jabbing a lot more. He barely jabbed against Haney. If you look at the punch stats, I don't know if that was by design, because Derek James fighters usually work behind the jab. So I wonder if it was by design that, like, if you look at the punch stats, Devin Haney dominated the jab battle. Ryan Garcia dominated, like more than doubled the power punching side of the stats, which again is odd for a Derek James fighter. And if you look at other Ryan Garcia fights, he was throwing straight hand leads, granted against a southpaw in Javier Fortuna, but he was just giving him a healthy dose of right hand, without setting it up with the jab. Against Emmanuel Tago, he was throwing more jabs. Against Luke Campbell, he was throwing more jabs. Against Oscar Duarte, he was throwing more jabs. He totally eliminated he just didn't throw jabs against Devin Haney. And instead, again, because remember, even after he hurt Devin Haney, and even after, because he hurt him in the first round, and then again, after he dropped Devin Haney, you would see Devin Haney looking like he's walking Ryan Garcia down. You start seeing Ryan Garcia even moving around the ring like he was moving against Oscar Duarte. You're wondering what's going on. So he would start becoming lower volume and more episodic, where he's like, okay, no punches, covering up, turn your back. He was doing that, right? Turn your back, and then pick a time to totally just explode with 3 to 5 punches, believing that one of those, because when he would throw just one punch, usually he would whiff with like a big left hook, a big sweeping left hook. He would whiff with it, and you would just see it just go by. When he would put 3 punches together or 5 punches together, that's when he would hurt Devin Haney. And the way that he would set up the left hook too. And I know he threw some nice drills of right hands. But that first knockdown, he just did the jab, boom. And it was like the jab turned it over and turned it into a hook. And Devin Haney, after the jab, thought that left hand was occupied. Like, okay, the jab's here. Don't have to worry about the left right now, right? So he throws a left and it's a jab. Let me make my move. So Devin Haney would move in right after the jab with a false sense of security and start trying to open up with his own punch. But what would then happen? His right hand is no longer at home protecting himself from the left hook. So Ryan Garcia would say, jab, left hook. And he would do it like in a millisecond, like boom, boom. And it was so pretty. You could watch it in slow motion. Jab, Devin Haney's hands are down here. Left hook, clean. And what else would Ryan Garcia do? He would put out a probing left hand, not a popping jab. He would probe for a second. Usually after he's thrown a couple punches, he would then stick his hand back out. And again, because his left hand, his lead hand, is extended, Devin Haney would think that, okay, I'm off the hook now. I don't have to worry about the left hook because the hand is occupied because it's extended. It's out here. It's not here where Ryan Garcia is going to throw a left hook from down here. It's out here. But what would Ryan Garcia then do? He would turn that extended left hand into a hook. Again, not a popping jab in the hook like he did with the first knockdown, but a extended hand and then turn that into a hook. And then there were a couple times, like the third knockdown, they were in the clinch. Ryan Garcia hits out of the clinch. Devin Haney tries to return fire and tries to throw 2 punches after the clinch. This is the 3rd knockdown. And Ryan Garcia throws the right first, and then he throws the left hook behind that. And again, it was out of the clinch. So he threw kind of like almost a lazier left, throws a drill of a right, then throws the left hook on top of that. Devin Haney is on his 2nd punch of the exchange and gets, once again, drilled upside the head. And it's weird because Devin Haney has a reputation of being a fighter who makes adjustments, who game plans, who's disciplined, look, it's almost unfair when people are compared to Floyd. But, they've been talking the talk. They've been talking, them and Floyd have been at odds. Remember back in the day, way back in the day, Devin Haney was trained by Floyd's dad, Floyd Sr., and, would often work out with Floyd a lot. But when there are a few boxes you have to check to even be in the Floyd discussion. One of the hallmarks of Floyd's game was that he was able to take the biggest weapon from his opponent and totally nullify that to where it's almost like a snake that's been defanged. If you got to worry about Pacquiao straight left, Floyd's got a game plan to reduce that. Devin Haney, if he was Floyd in this scenario, would have done something to mitigate the left hook. Now, granted, a lot changes when your legs ain't working anymore. Devin Haney got hurt early, and yes, he did win those later rounds, but I felt like he was always one clean punch away from being right back, either just on the canvas or super jelly leg, to where he's holding on and he's doing everything he can to survive. Like, how many different survival moments? Like, it's a testament to Devin Haney's character and his heart that he survived the full 12 rounds. There were a few times in that fight that I'm thinking, damn, Devin ain't making it out of this one. That's what I was thinking. But yeah, let me get to some more of what you guys are saying. Sup Swoles is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. Sup Swole said during the program's during that program's fight, he was definitely trying to show off his clothing line. Yeah. And my bad, I think I'm way behind on the comments. Let me do this. Let me get to some of the more recent ones, so I don't sound like I'm talking about 20 minutes ago. Benny Bronx is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Let's see. EK, did Spence leave Derek James? I've heard that there is some turmoil. Derek James has also acknowledged that they're not on the best of terms. I don't know if Spence has selected a new trainer yet. So I don't know if he's totally not working with Derek James. And I heard that it's about money, which would be very unfortunate and kind of sad. You know what I mean? Like, they came up together. Let's see. David Eisler said, Madrimov is on his way to winning that fight. Oh, you think so? You think that he's going to beat Terrence Crawford? I would like to see what the betting odds are on that one. You said it gets on my nerves that Tim Tszyu lost to Fundora. That was such a fluke. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Like, that was it was a fluke. A fluke is like something that would never happen again. Like, in 100 fights, you wouldn't get a cut like that on the top of the head again. You're right. But boxing is full of flukes, isn't it? Like, there's always some unexpected thing that happens, like in Haney versus Garcia. There are a lot of things that kind of complicate, was this like a fair fight? Was this totally on the up and up? And it's almost weirder when the fluke is something that happens like in the ring. I mean, headbutts are the one that we see the most, when a headbutt is so bad that it changes the course of the fight. But this is one that was to the top of the head. And I do think that Tim Tszyu would have won that fight. I mean, I could just look at how the first and second round looked like they were going before that cut happened. EK said, I don't know who saw this result coming from Ryan. This is the bigger upset. I felt more shocked than even when AJ got knocked out by Ruiz. So was this a bigger upset? I would have to look back. Okay, so there have been bigger upsets on paper. For instance, Mikey Garcia losing to Sandor Martin on paper was a bigger upset. It wasn't as high stakes we knew next to nothing about Sandor Martin at the time. But we get some big upsets. Mauricio Lara, who we didn't know a lot about before he knocked out Josh Warrington. That was a big upset. So usually the upset that occurs is when we know very little about the B-side guy who ends up being a real one, right? So let's see. Victor Ortiz getting beat by Marcos Maidana. That was an upset. Big upset. Even after that, Maidana beating Adrian Broner. Most people, I thought that Maidana was going to be a big problem because of how Broner was jumping weight classes. But a lot of people thought Broner was going to showcase against Marcos Maidana. So it's usually something like that. That's an upset. Rarely do the upsets happen with two guys that we know a lot about. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, if Keith Thurman were to have beaten Tim Tszyu, that would have been a big, big upset. We know a lot about Keith Thurman. We know a lot about Tim Tszyu. And knowing what we know about both, their ages, their fight trajectories, their careers, their inactivity or or not overactivity, but a lot of activity, appropriate activity, that would have been a huge upset because we had a good idea of what we were expecting to see going into that one. Or at least we felt like we had a good idea. Yeah, James. The difference in hand speed between Haney and Garcia was huge. And that's what's going to make it tricky as Haney comes back, as he returns to the ring. Because it's almost like the jury's out now. You know what I mean? Like, or the jury's in. Which one is it? But the jury has concluded that you can hurt Devin Haney, right? That's on the table. Devin Haney doesn't have a vicious punch. And unlike some of the guys that Devin Haney would get compared to, like, for instance, Devin Haney doesn't have that. And I've said this like in a lot of older previews. I think I said it for Haney versus Gamboa, Haney versus Jojo Diaz, and maybe a couple of others. Haney, I always thought, had B+ level hand speed. I'm not just saying this after this fight against Garcia. I've always thought that he had B+ level hand speed. I thought he had great boxing ability, very, very good boxing ability at least. He looked faster than Regis Prograis, but he also looked like his arms were a lot longer than Prograis. I never thought that he had Zab Judah like hand speed, Gary Russell like hand speed, Shane Mosley, Floyd Mayweather. Who are some of the other fastest hands fighters that you could think of? Just the guys who had just that blazing, like, damn, blink, you know what I mean, type of hand speed. Manny Pacquiao, Amir Khan to an extent. I never thought that Devin Haney had that type of hand speed. And plus, he doesn't throw like a ton of conversations. He doesn't have that, like, Zab Judah used to throw like this uppercut, like out of nowhere. Like the fight would be at a measured pace. And then it would almost be like you would need an instant replay to see how fast the punch was when Zab Judah would let that left uppercut go. He caught Miguel Cotto with it. He caught Costa Tszyu with it. And he caught several others with it. But Devin Haney doesn't have that type of hand speed. Let's see. David Iser said Madrimov was on his way to beating Michael Soro, who, by the way, Michael Soro was a fighter who wasn't very well known, but like Ring Magazine had him ranked as a top 10 154 pounder till the head clash. I do think Madrimov is a dangerous fighter for a dangerous fight for Crawford. Didn't Madrimov beat Michael Soro before? That was their second fight that involved the head clash, wasn't it? I think Madrimov had beaten Soro and the head clash took place in the rematch. I got to double check, but I think that's how that went down. 07, keep it real, is in the house. Thank you for coming through. He said Floyd recuperates very quickly while Haney doesn't. Floyd recuperates pretty well. I thought Haney he took about a round against Linares to recuperate. And even after that, it didn't seem like he was back to like 100%. But I see what you're saying, because we've seen Floyd's been hurt against a few people. Emmanuel Augustus, Shane Mosley. He wasn't hurt badly against Zuda, but he was stung. Marcos Maidana, he buckled against Maidana at the end of that one round where he had to kind of steady himself and, turn around and sit on his stool. And DeMarcus Chop Chop Corley had Floyd hurt. Chop Chop Corley had a few really good fighters hurt. He had Miguel Cotto in all types of trouble before Cotto recovered and turned it around. But yeah, Floyd does tend to recuperate, but he was hurt a couple of times against Augustus and against Chop Chop Corley. Let's see. Cesar said when he got cracked and he fought. Devin Haney with that first knockdown, when he got put on his butt and he kind of slid backwards like that, the first knockdown where it was that jab hook, when he tried to roll over and then get up, he was stuck for a few seconds. And when I saw him roll over and he was kind of like on his shoulder and it looked like his legs were kind of bent, but it looked like they were stuck. I'm like, damn, he's not getting up. I don't know if this has ever happened to any of y'all, but like if you sit for too long in certain positions, your leg could fall asleep. And if you try to get up, imagine that you're a boxer, because this is what I imagine, like getting buzzed to that degree kind of feels like in terms of your legs failing you. Imagine if one or both of your legs were asleep and you've got to get up. Because, I would like just kind of think, okay, if I was a boxer, I've got 10 seconds to recover. What I might do is try to get up and just stand stiff leg for a second. And then once the fight continues, just as soon as the guy gets there, your opponent gets there, take a second knee. Because check it out. It's better to get knocked down twice in one round than it is to get knocked down in one round and then in the next round. Because if you get knocked down twice in one round, that's the difference between a 10-7 round and a 10-8 round. If you get knocked down in one round, then the next round, that's already a 10-8 and 10-8. So yeah, I would just take a second knee if you really need to take a second knee. But yeah, when I saw Devin Haney down over on his shoulder, I was like, I think I said this in the post-fight video. When Pacquiao got knocked out by Marquez in their fourth fight, Roy Jones is like, he's not getting up, Jim. He's not getting up, Jim. And that's what was playing through my head when I saw Haney down like that. Like, he didn't look like he was out, but he looked like he was awake, but his body was about to fail him. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if he got up and looked like Zab Judah getting up too quick. Zab Judah should have taken the full 8 against Costa Tszyu. I wouldn't have been surprised if that's what Haney looked like getting up. Or when Roy Jones got dropped for the first time in that rematch against Antonio Tarver, the knockout punch that changed Roy Jones's career. When he finally got up at like 8 or 9, he had like a kind of sleepy smile on his face and he looked like he wanted to kind of continue, but then you see him kind of trotting into the ropes, almost falling over the rope. You know what I mean? That's what I thought Haney was going to look like if he did beat the 10 count. But to his credit, he not only got up from that, he got up from a second knockdown, a third knockdown. And when he got knocked down in the 7th round, there was like 2 minutes left in the round to go. So it's like, man, this is going to be like the longest 2 minutes of Devin Haney's life. And he made it out of there. And he made it out of the 12th round. So again, props to him. But that first knockdown especially looked like his body wasn't ready to cooperate. Let's see. David Iser said, I thought Jesus Ramos losing to Lubin was a fluke, but I do remember picking Lubin. I did pick Lubin, but I didn't. Watching the fight, I thought Ramos edged it. I thought Ramos should have won like 7 rounds to 5, depending on how you're judging and what you're looking for. I was surprised as hell. I bet on Lubin that night. I bet on Lubin. So I was happy just from a betting standpoint, but I thought that Jesus Ramos, like, put it like this. After this 12th round sounded, I was like, well, damn, there goes that bet. And then they announced it, and the volume, I think the room was louder than the TV was at this time. So when I saw Lubin running and celebrating, I'm like, well, what happened? They gave him that fight? So in fairness, that's what I was thinking at the conclusion of that fight. Let's see. Lee Van said, Lampley said Garcia Haney was a bigger upset than Tyson Douglas. Ridiculous. I think Lampley was getting caught up in the moment. And you know what? Like, Lampley, if I had a short list of favorite guys in the fight game, non-boxers, Lampley would be on my short list. You know what I mean? Maybe it's nostalgic, but he is so clear-headed. Sometimes not while the fight's going on, because he was one of the guys who in certain fights was super pulling for the A-side fighter. And it would throw the commentary off to where you see both guys doing some good work, but only the A-side guy getting acknowledged. Like, for instance, when Antonio Margarito beat Miguel Cotto in the controversial fight where he just bludgeoned Cotto. I thought that Cotto's career was almost done for. That's how vicious of a beating that was. But Margarito was proven to be a quitter or a cheater down the line as his career would unfold, to where that pretty much stained his whole career. I feel his reputation is kind of mud right now in the fight game, right? But Margarito, the night that he was the B-side against Miguel Cotto was still undefeated, was a champion and all that. The commentary in that fight, because we didn't know Margarito was cheating at that time. I think was he busted for PEDs earlier in his career? I'd have to revisit that. But during that call, during the broadcast, Lampley was pulling for Cotto so much, and you could hear it in his commentary. It was very, very biased. Otherwise, I love, Lampley and his work. But for him to say that was a bigger upset than Tyson versus Douglas, I don't know if there has been a bigger upset in my lifetime than Tyson Douglas. I remember the night of the fight. I didn't even see the fight. I was a little kid. And it was a Tyson fight that was kind of unheralded. Yes, it was out in Japan, but this wasn't like Tyson versus Larry Holmes or, Tyson versus Michael Spinks or even Marvis Frazier. This was a fight that, Tyson was supposed to win. It was just a routine Tyson fight. Is it going to be the first round? Is it going to be the third round? I remember my dad, who's a huge fight fan, put me up on a boxing. I'm largely a fight fan because of my dad, who's in the chat, Stan Tucker. But I remember him getting a call. I was sitting in the family room. He was in the kitchen. He gets a call. And again, we're not watching the fight. And he's like, what? And it sounded like, the shock in his voice. And then he tells me, Mike Tyson, Tyson lost. And again, I'm a young kid at this time. And I remember vaguely just seeing, Michael Spinks on the canvas in the first round against Tyson. That's one of my earliest boxing memories. But when he got that call, I remember learning that the fight was in Japan, learning later on that Mike Tyson said that he had like a stomach issue during that fight, and learning who Buster Douglas was. And remember Mike Tyson's punch out for you, like older school, relatively older school cats like myself. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was like the quintessential boxing fight game, right? The Nintendo game. But they even tried to make a Buster Douglas fight video game after that win. I forgot what they called it, but there was a Buster Douglas video game. But yeah, that was probably the biggest upset. And then there are other contenders for second place. And even if there was a fight that was like a bigger upset on paper, it wasn't reputation-wise. It would be, what were the betting odds on that Tyson Douglas fight? It had to have been super crazy. I know that when Layman Brewster beat Vladimir Klitschko, that the odds were like 11-1 or something like that. But I remember my uncle put money on Layman Brewster on that fight. And I remember he was watching it with me, my dad and my family. And he was like, come on, Layman. Because Layman was just getting tagged, just getting beaten. Like everybody was getting beaten up by Vladimir Klitschko around that era. Just getting jabbed. Then every now and then, Klitschko would throw that missile of a right hand before closing the show. But Brewster was losing just about every round. Then suddenly, it was almost like like Vladimir Klitschko was having some sort of like a heart attack or like some sort of a major episode. All of a sudden, he got hit a couple times. He starts getting wobbled. His arms start doing that weird thing when he starts getting hit like that. And then, Klitschko's on the canvas, and then you see him getting up. His face almost looks like super pale. Like I thought he was going to faint. But yeah, that was another major upset. But again, not as big as Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas. Again, Mike Tyson's reputation was just through the roof. He was just viewed as being unstoppable. I don't know if there has been a force in boxing as big and a phenomenon as big as Tyson since Mike Tyson. The ones who would even come close would be like Manny Pacquiao, that phenomenon. Floyd Mayweather in a way, a different type of phenomenon, but because of the knockout record, because of the not record, but the knockout reputation and performances, and the mystique, the fear that he pumped into like opponents' hearts, Mike Tyson was just embodied what you would want that sinister fighter, your quintessential don't mess with that guy type of guy. You know what I mean? So there hasn't been anything like it since, really. Jesus is in the house. What's up? Thank you for coming through. Let's see. Carmen Serena's in the house. Thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. David Iser said, what's your opinion about how good Edwin Valero was? You know, he was one of the greatest things that could have been that I can't say never was, because he did enough to, I don't know, he just went off the rails, and his life just turned so tragic. I mean, the writing was on the wall. He was undefeated, taking everybody's head off, like started to enter like the pound for pound rankings and stuff. He's on the short list of like some of the greatest things that could have been that we just didn't see unfold. But from a talent standpoint, his talent was looking like it was jumping off the page. But if you think about it, there are other fighters that if you just take like the early part of their career and their career would have ended there, they would have been the greatest thing that never was. Like if you take Oscar De La Hoya's career up until maybe his first Chavez fight, where he just demolished Rafael Ruelas, demolished Chiquitito Gennaro Hernandez from South Central LA. And that was Oscar's whole career. People might have look, if Roy Jones Jr. didn't take that rematch against Antonio Tarver and would have retired, people would have been talking about maybe Roy Jones being the greatest fighter to ever live. Seriously, that would have been his reputation. Now you don't ever hear him mentioned as one of the greatest ever. They'll say he is one of the greatest I've ever seen with my own two eyes when he was in his prime. But when people talk about the totality of the career, Roy Jones usually isn't mentioned. And it's because of how his career went on. I don't know what would have happened to Edwin Valero's career if he were to have fought like another 5 years. So yeah, like Mikey Garcia was a great undefeated fighter for a long time. I mean, we've seen them. We've seen fighters who look great. All of a sudden, everything turns around and they can never recapture it. And they just start losing a lot after that. So we see all kinds of different things. Like if Shane Mosley would have retired right before fighting Vernon Forrest the first time, Shane Mosley would have been looked at and seen as one of the greatest fighters ever. Really. Let's see. Karma Serene said, you got to have your dad come on and tell us a story. Yeah. And, and he could tell a lot of these stories better than I can. And, we talk about fights and fighters a lot. And sometimes we would have been sitting in the same room watching a fight, like our memory of Victor Ortiz versus Marcos Maidana. Like we remember that one and we talk about that a lot. And there's certain fights that we talk about, but then we'll introduce certain other fights and then we'll discover that we had different recollections over what happened, to the point where we will have to jump on and like watch, ask Wikipedia, wait, who won that one? And what was the order of fights? Like, did he fight this guy, then that guy, then that guy? Because I kind of have like a good memory in terms of like the timeline of things. So we'll have debates like, no, that didn't happen that way. So we run into some of that. But yeah, like he has a great recollection of recent boxing events, because, he still watches like as much as I watch, close. I might watch a little bit more than him these days, but he still watches pretty much everything, right? Like, if you're still watching, he might have it broadcasted on the big screen right now, so he might not have access to the chat. But yeah, we still watch a ton of boxing, and we try to watch them. We try to watch as many fights in the same room as possible. We can't get to them all, but we still do it with a fair amount of regularity. Hot Factor Robert Reed said, I don't think this was an upset. I think it was Game 7, and Garcia knew what he needed to do to win the Game 7 for the championship. Yeah, well put. And you know what? That part is also, I mean, people were talking about their familiarity with each other, but the importance of the familiarity and the fact that, Ryan's got to know by now whether he's as fast or faster than Devin. He's got to know what things should work for him. Like if you were to look at the tail of the tape, not in terms of the height and the size and the reach, but in terms of who checks what boxes as you go down from an attribute skills standpoint, he's got to know which things might work for him. And maybe that's why he and Derek James plotted out a more episodic approach and didn't try to beat him with a with an array of jabs and a jab heavy approach. Maybe conserve some of that energy. Let Devin Haney think he's walking you down. Let Devin Haney put his jab out there. Stay out of range just a little bit. Move around. Feint a little bit. Get on your bike. And then when you want to explode, break out that can of whoop ass. You know what I mean? Like, go ahead and throw 5 punches, vicious punches. You're bound to hit the guy with something. Like, he's defensive, but he ain't a magician. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if you do clip him, well, that has lingering effects. It's not like you just hurt him in the 7th and he's not going to feel the effects of it in the 8th, 9th. So yeah, it was a combination between strategic weight management, we'll call it, a strategic investment in betting, in foregoing the 1.5 million, then betting the 2 million on yourself. I mean, damn, he made that work from a business standpoint as well. That part makes it look a little bit brilliant. If he really did bet that 2 million after after betting the 1.5 million, that was a smart play. But I think that it was a mix between those things and a good game plan, and those got him a win. Got him the win. And plus, just the attributes that he brings into the ring. He is a fast puncher. Like, nobody has ever said anything about a lack of talent when it comes to Ryan Garcia. It's all the other things, the intangibles, the intestinal fortitude, as they say, the mental components of the game. That's been the question mark. Lee Van said that it was a 40-1 odds for Buster Douglas. If that was the case, look, let me know if anybody ever sees like a 40 and I see Bobby Unksweko is in the house. Thank you for coming through. He said Buster Douglas was a 42-1. Yo, if any of you guys ever see a 42 or 42-1 on anything, I don't care if it's Ryan Garcia versus Sean O'Malley. Like, let me know when you see those odds, and I will put money on the underdog. Straight up. Look, if Rances Barthélemy was a 40-1, and by the way, Rances Barthélemy knocked Gary Antoine Russell down. Don't forget that. Not Gary Russell Jr., but Gary Antoine Russell, the younger brother, bigger, fights at 140, power puncher, not as fast. Barthélemy dropped Gary Russell. Gary Russell then dropped Barthélemy, and then they waved the fight off. I thought that was a weird stoppage, but Barthélemy is going to be the guy who they feed, essentially, now that Jose Ramirez is signed to Golden Boy. Jose Ramirez this weekend is going to be fighting Rances Barthélemy. But if Barthélemy is a 40-1 underdog or even a 20-1 underdog, let me know. If Thomas Delorme this weekend, who's going to be fighting Virgil Ortiz Jr., if Thomas Delorme is a 20-1 underdog, let me know. That's ridiculous. 42-1. Yeah, that there isn't a upset like that, especially when it comes to high level fighters since that one. Yeah, James Backlund, Edwin Valero was scary and evil. Yeah, deeply disturbed. I mean, some people it just bees like that. They just got, you either know people, hopefully not knowing too many people like it, or you see people, you hear stories, you read stories. And then you see like the mugshot and you're like, oh yeah, that dude seems like he was serious business before he went and killed so-and-so and so-and-so. Like, stuff's real in the field. You know what I mean? Like, and people go through a whole array of different things mentally. Plus, if somebody's like on, like, I don't know, like PCP, like some of the worst horror stories you'll hear when it comes to violence were due to PCP or SHRM or some of the stuff that they have out in the streets, Let's see. Thank you. James Backlund said, Woog kind of having a good memory is a huge understatement. Thank you. Yeah, I try to remember as much as I can. It helps to rewatch a lot of fights. And also for any fight that's up and coming, I always look at their whole resume, look at their succession of fights and the order, the chain of events essentially. And that type of, repractice behavior and just doing it again. I think it just helps to kind of fill in the blanks. Like you know what you think you know, the research and the continued research, I think, helps fill in the blanks too. Let's see. David Eiser says, speaking of which, do you give any shot to Delorme of even surviving 12 rounds with Vergil this weekend? Speaking of which, right? Surviving the 12, maybe, but probably not. I think that if Vergil could get cooking at 154, like he would cook at 147, Vergil's a problem. Like, to me, the only question with Vergil is his health. That's it. Like, look, I was wanting to see Boots Ennis versus Vergil Ortiz, not knowing which way I would go with it if they were to have fought like 2 years ago. Vergil, I really look at as being on the short list, like as one of the most promising young fighters in the sport. Yes, he did get hurt against Mean Machine. Yes, he's now up a division. And if you look at his build right now, you see that he doesn't have that like scary, wiry build. You know how some guys, they'll have that, who's built like, kind of, scary, wiry, where they just seem like they're kind of wound tight. They're not muscular or anything. They just kind of have that. Oh, when Jaime Munguia fought that first big win, Saddam Ali, Jaime Munguia kind of had that wiry build where it wasn't muscular, but he looked like he was rangy. He had that reach, threw vicious shots. And you're just thinking like, man, I would not want to fight that guy at a house party. One of those types of dudes. Like Vergil Ortiz kind of strikes me of like, he reminds me of a lot of people I know who are a little bit wild, you know what I mean? And who would be the type like, let's go, like Vergil. And he kind of has that face. He's a super nice dude. You hear him in interviews and he's a super interesting guy. He like plays guitar and he's super, he's got a good sense of humor, different stuff like that. But he's got that like let's go type of like demeanor when he's getting in the ring. And, he now has just a little bit more like pudge around his like stomach area at 154. Not to say he looks out of shape. In fact, he looks a little bit more muscular. But like, remember when Mikey Garcia what he looked like before his 2.5 year layoff, before he came back at like 130 or 135, when he was like a 126 guy and like Mikey had the mustache and stuff. That Mikey Garcia had a total different body type than the slightly more muscular, a little bit softer looking, muscular and soft looking. He just looked more like filled out and looked less skinny and rangy when he came back. And he was like in his late 20s to his early 30s. Vergil, I don't think he'll ever get that wiry build back because it sounds like, his rhabdomyolysis might be exacerbated by dropping those extra pounds required to get down to 147. So we'll see how his body treats him at 154. But if his body is okay with it, I think he'll be a problem at 154. I don't know if he'll be as good at 154 as he was at 147, but he is about 5'10". I think I seen him listed as tall as 5'11", but let's say 5'10". So he's not a short 154. He was definitely not a short 147, but he's not one of these like, 5'8"-ish guys who's trying to go up to 154. You know what I mean? So there's more to fill out around, around him. But yeah, let me see. I want to get to a couple. TMG is in the house. Thank you for coming through. By the way, did my feed die? It looked like it died on one of my screens. And so let me know if it did. If it didn't, we'll just keep rocking. But yeah, we're actually going to, Nothing is Originals in the house. We in here. Heck yeah. Thank you for coming through. James Backless said Bud has a scary physique. Yeah, and the fact that, he's a wrestler too. So it's like he could whoop you one way or another. Bud is just a problem. And Bud has like this instinct. He seems like one of those guys who like is not only a boxer, but he could scrap. Like, for instance, I think one of my other cousins pointed this out. You get the feeling that if Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney were to have met like on campus and it was like a fight. And like people are just, it's like, all right, let's go. Because of how Ryan Garcia puts punches together. And this is even before they fought. I would assume Ryan Garcia would win a quick fight, like 2 minutes to go. Let's go with Devin Haney. Bud seems like he knows exactly what he needs to throw when he needs to throw it. And it's just like a boop, 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 like type of scenario when Bud wants to. And yes, he could do that. And he knows how to adapt where he could even forego and give up a round or two in the first, second, or third, and then come back and knock you out. Like, look at how he handled Kell Brook. loses the first, arguably loses the second, adjusts in the third, knocks him out in the fourth. Let's see. Hot facts with Robert Reed says Garcia versus Fundora or Boots at 147. I think the fight with Boots would be a huge payday for both. So Garcia. Okay, so I don't think Garcia is going to get a title shot against Fundora at one. Well, Fundora's okay. Oh, you're saying Garcia versus Fundora at 154 or against Boots at 147. It sounds like, Garcia is calling out Boots. How much seriousness there is to it, I don't know. I don't think that would be a smart fight to take, not now at least. But I also don't think that he can make 140 anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see how they match make for Ryan Garcia. And I'll repeat, I don't see Tank Davis rematching Ryan Garcia at 140. And I don't see Garcia making weight at 140. So I don't know how they would work that one out. And Tank Davis likes to still, conduct his business like, hey, we're calling most of the shots. I'm sure Golden Boy and Ryan Garcia are going to be less agreeable to all of Tank Davis's terms if they are to run it back. Jay Foreman is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Heck yeah. So who do I want to see Ryan fight next? Teofimo, if he can make 140. If he can make 140, I want to see Ryan Garcia versus Teofimo Lopez. That's what I would want to see next. If he can't make 140, I would want to see him in a less than, I wouldn't want to see him just jump right in there with like a top 5 147 guy. I mean, look, I don't know how Ryan would do against Subriel Matias. I wouldn't count him out. I wouldn't count him out against Matias. Ryan is a special puncher. If he could do something about Matias's pressure, and if he could hit Matias as cleanly as basically everybody else who fights Matias hits him, because he does get hit by just about everybody, I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan surprises a lot of people and stops Matias, to be honest. I know that Matias has been looking like a steamroller, but everybody has a limit as to what they could take. Look, once upon a time, Ricardo Mayorga's chin was indestructible. Later on, fast forward a few years, people started putting his lights out. It just happens like that. MAW is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Yes, please smash that like button if you haven't. Thank you. Heck yeah. Let's see. EK said, how was Amir Khan versus Bud more competitive than Bud versus Spence? Yeah, really, right? Bud versus a lot of people was more competitive than Bud versus Spence. That was such a shocking unfolding. Yes, a lot of people picked Bud to win. Yes, a lot of people picked Bud by stoppage to win. I don't think we thought that we would get an end-to-end schooling beating. Just Spence couldn't get anything going and got dropped several times and got stopped. I don't think we imagined that we would see a fight that goes so badly for Spence. Speaking of guys who had their reputation changed over the course of one fight, to where now we're like, I don't know, should Spence get in there against Fundora? I don't know how Spence would do it against Tim Tszyu. I don't know how Spence. Now that is how we talk about Errol Spence. One fight changed all that. Nate Johnson, thank you for coming through. He said Ryan needs to stop with the Victorville shell. It ain't a Philly shell, the Victorville shell, or he gets a broken rib. Yeah, and I was happy that, Devin Haney took what the defense gave him and started teeing off on him. You saw how at first Harvey Dock warned Devin Haney for hitting, but Devin Haney's like, look, he's turning his back. But then you saw Devin Haney start hitting more towards the spine area. I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Hit towards the side of the back area, not the spine area. So yeah, whenever he does that, whoever he's fighting should be in a position to start just launching either left hooks to the side back area or straight rights. Just start digging in, because when Ryan is back here, yes, he might come with a left or with a right uppercut, or he might come with a straight right. But you know what he's not going to come with when he's back here is a left hook. So tee off. But when you see Ryan start squaring back up, get the hell out of Dodge. You know what I mean? Because he lets go of that left hook quickly. And I almost think that there should be like, there are a couple versions of Ryan Garcia. In the ring, there is clearly something that we should, kind of view as angry Ryan. You don't want to make Ryan angry. You know what I mean? Like when he starts letting 4 to 5 punches go, unless you could swim without getting wet, to quote the late, great Nassim Richardson, former Bernard Hopkins trainer, Shane Mosley trainer from Philly, unless you could truly swim without getting wet, like Gervonta Davis did against Ryan Garcia, just back all the way up when you see Ryan Garcia start coming forward with 2, 3, 4 punches. If you're able to duck and stay low like Tank did, good luck. Maybe it works for you, but you might get clipped upside the head. And if you get clipped upside the top of the head, your equilibrium is going to be way off. It's almost worse sometimes to get clipped upside the head than in the side of the head sometimes. You used to see it, or still see it sometimes in the UFC. A kick, like a head kick, might look like it's barely missing, where it's just barely clipping the top of the guy's head. But then you see that he can't stand up to save his life, and he's all over the place. So yeah, we're about to wrap this one up, guys. I want to thank everybody for coming through. Yeah, MAW, congrats on Ryan for the win, but he's still not a champion, you're right, and still hasn't been a champion, which is very interesting. In the top of the hour, we were talking about all of the weight-related things that do kind of cloud this one. And again, time will tell whether that becomes a part of the fight's reputation or if everybody forgets about it as time goes on and they forget how Ryan might have strategically missed weight, then bet 1.5 million, then bet 2 million on himself to win like 8 million or something, to have that physical advantage in the ring against a guy who clearly did the work to suffer to get down to the contractual weight. And again, people could say, hey, Devin Haney chose to agree to that 1.5 million, to agree to let the fight go on. But again, I ask, did Devin Haney really have a choice in the matter? Like, was it really an option for Devin Haney to say, nope, okay, fight's off. You guys deal with the aftermath of the fight being off, but I'm not getting in the ring with him. We agreed to 140. He's 143. That's BS. I ain't doing it. The boxing world would have come down on Devin Haney, and he would have been labeled everything in the book if he didn't still go forward with fighting a guy who blew weight by 3 pounds, which is unfortunate. It sucks. And maybe that was a calculation that Ryan and his team knew that Devin Haney couldn't pull out of the fight. Too much money on the table. Like they say, it is what it is. TMG said he thinks Lomachenko beats Shakur. We'll have to see Shakur fight another top-level fighter. I just hope he's able to get somebody meaningful in the ring with him. It looks like his next opponent's going to be that opponent that Frank Martin had in his last fight, Artem Haratunian. It sounds like that's going to be Shakur Stevenson's next opponent. Lee Van, thank you. Peace. Oh, subscribe. Thank you. Oh, you did. Thank you. Appreciate you, man. David Eister, thank you again for coming through. MAW, Jay Foreman. You asked, do I think people are making too much of Ryan not making weight? Or not, or making too much or not enough? Some of it does sound like excuses. And I don't want to take credit away from Ryan. He still did what he had to do. And a lot of the fights throughout the history of boxing come with some of those weird caveats where you should include it into the narrative because it is a part of the story. And in this one, I think that it did play a part in how the fight unfolded. But you have to, people have to weigh these things. I think that it's going to take a fighter to make the tough decision to forego the money and not make the millions and cancel the event or force them to give you like a late minute replacement who's not as good or not as exciting for the fans as the guy who missed weight. But it's going to take for somebody to do that to make this what might look like it might actually be a strategic calculation to miss weight. But not everybody could pull it off. If a lesser fighter did it, he would F up his career. Nobody would want to work with him, and he would be all kinds of things. Shakur Stevenson missed weight against Conceição. He made some concessions, forked over some money, but he didn't have he had the A-side leverage to do so. But if you don't have that leverage, you can't be the guy to miss weight. You have to have the power to enable you to miss weight and then rewrite the rules, basically. Again, read up on what happened with Floyd Mayweather versus Juan Manuel Marquez. A lot of people forget about the weight shenanigans in that one. Um, Nothing is original said, Beterbiev versus Bivol. Who you got currently? I know it's subject to change. Yeah, I think I said that in the last live chat. My opinion is always changing on this one. You know, I'm not going to lie. I have been thinking a little bit more about Beterbiev's age and Bivol's ability to control range, and Bivol having better legs and range management than Callum Smith, than Anthony Yarde. Anthony Yarde is a pretty athletic fighter, pretty athletic puncher, and he's a better boxer. He's an improving boxer. Right now, it's just hard to see Beterbiev fighting for 12 rounds and not getting to the guy. You know what I mean? Bivol is going to have to get so much respect from Beterbiev, and Bivol isn't the puncher Anthony Yarde is. Bivol isn't the puncher Joe Smith Jr. is. Bivol isn't the puncher. I know Bivol beat Joe Smith Jr., but Bivol isn't the puncher that Callum Smith is. Bivol is really going to have to get Beterbiev's respect. But you know what? Bivol has been fighting dangerous guys. He fought Joe Smith, beat him. He fought Jean Pascal, beat him. He fought Zordo Ramirez, beat him. He fought Canelo, beat him. He's obviously doing something to get these guys respect to where they're not just coming at him, running through the front door. Because look, if they could, they would. There is a real reason why they can't. You know what I mean? You know how they say, I would if I could, but I can't, so I ain't? They ain't. You know what I mean? They're not just running up on Dmitry Bivol. But Beterbiev is like, you know how, what was it? Michael Jackson's Thriller, the long video, right? Where he turns into the werewolf, where he's walking through the woods or something with that girl. Ola Ray, I think is the actress's name. But he's walking through her and he's like, I got something to tell you. She's like, what, Michael? He's like, I'm not like other guys. And then she's like, I know, that's what I love about you. But like, Artur Beterbiev is not like other guys. He's not like other fighters. His type of pressure is sustained and it's backed with boxing, but it's backed with, I've been calling him one of the most destructive forces in the fight game. So is Bivol going to be able to get enough of Beterbiev's respect to be able to navigate the waters like he normally does? It's tough to picture, but if anybody could do it in that division, we already know both of these guys have more or less cleaned out the division. So if anybody could do it, it's Dmitry Bivol. You know what? Today I'm gonna say that Bivol will do it. He will sting Beterbiev. He will get Beterbiev's respect. Beterbiev will keep coming forward. He will have his moments. He'll have moments where it looks like he's walking him down. Moments where we think, hey, is Bivol in trouble? He will have those moments, but Bivol will have more moments, will win more rounds, because Beterbiev will lose rounds here and there. He will. We could talk about the few fights that he has. Gvosdik, you know what I mean? He lost some rounds too. I'm going to go with Bivol today via decision, close decision, because of those Beterbiev moments. Maybe not a knockdown, but something close to it. Maybe Beterbiev even finishes the fight strong to where Bivol's holding on late, but did enough in the first half of the fight and won enough of the late rounds to pull off a close decision. That's where I'm going to stand with that one, at least for today. Subject to change is right. Heart of Broward County is in the house. Thank you for coming through. Nothing is original. Thoughts on Benjamin Whitaker? He's exciting. I think that he's I like what I'm seeing. Yet to be determined. Definitely worth watching earlier in his career. I'm interested to see how it unfolds, and I'm interested to see how they move him. Like, when does he fight like a true B-level guy? Ventru is in the house. Yes, thank you for coming through. Oh, thank you. Yeah, 3,000 subs. Yeah, I think that it started to accelerate a little bit. It took a long time to get from 1 to 2. Took a little bit shorter to get from 2 to 3. We'll see how quickly we could go from 3 to 4 or 5 and see if we could get some real momentum going. I'll try my best for sure. Yeah, James Backley. Beterbiev does have underrated footwork. Yeah, you change your mind on the fight every day as well. Beterbiev, it's a different type of footwork. It's not that classic. It's not like Lomachenko or Usyk type of footwork, and it's not move around the ring type of footwork. But it's an intelligent know when to start closing the gap and to let those little short hooks go. Know when to jab, and when to sit on a right hand. Like, you could see the different moments where that fight between him and Callum Smith changed. There were a couple moments, and the way that he used his feet against Callum Smith was different than how he used his feet against Joe Smith Jr. With Smith, Beterbiev was the one moving around the perimeter. Joe Smith was the hunter until he wasn't. Beterbiev was moving, would wait till Joe Smith Jr. is reaching from too far out or from too close in with the jab, and then Beterbiev would throw his counter, put Joe Smith in all types of trouble. Nothing is Original said, should Alim Hanala, that's Janibek, move divisions? Nothing is happening at middleweight. There's almost not a middleweight division right now. Do you notice that? Like PBC has 154 pretty much on lock, right? Are they the ones working with the Saudis on this Crawford fight? Let me know if that's the case. I don't know it to be the case. Maybe this is just a Riyadh season thing. Maybe even with one of the DAZN, Matchroom, or Golden Boy. I'm not sure who I was working with the Saudis for that card. But 154 has largely been a PBC thing. From 147 to 154, PBC's had the lion's share of the guys. Different promoters have the best or most of the elite fighters in different divisions. For a while, Top Rank, was cooking at 140 and 135. Matchroom, it has been shining in certain divisions. 168 pretty recently. Now 168, it's a lot of the, well, it's actually it's a little bit of everything right now. Pacheco is with Matchroom. Benavidez is PBC. David Morrell, PBC. Canelo, wherever he wants to go, right? Munguia, Golden Boy. That one's a little bit all over the place. But because the guys at 160 have started to move up for better opportunities at 168, Janibek is almost like in this zone at 160 middleweight. Historically, one of the best divisions. Like, is there anybody there? Anybody there? Anybody there? Anyone want to fight? Want to fight? Want to fight? Like, that's Janibek right now. I'm like, damn. Like, can he at least get, like, Carlos Adames in the ring with him? Like, if he could do that, then at least you've got the WBC champion who hasn't fought since he beat Julian J-Rock Williams that Adamek just beat? And he's been holding a lesser version of Jermall Charlo's title. Jermall Charlo was still the WBC 160-pound title holder. So now Janibek holds two of those belts, but there's nobody home. And especially on Top Rank. Top Rank has been pretty weak at 160, 168 for like a while now. If you think about who their best fighters have been, it's been at 135. It's been at 140. It's been maybe some guys at 126, 130, 135, 140 in that, range. And then obviously some, heavyweight and light heavyweight, stuff like that. But there's nobody right now for Janibek. So yeah, if he is able to move up to 168, he should. I don't know how many more fights he has on his contract with Top Rank, but he needs to find out right now if Bob Arum, Todd DeBuff, and Top Rank are willing to make cross-promotional fights for him versus some of the savages at 168. That's what he needs to do right now. Or whoever's handling his business, that's what they need to be looking at. Let's see. Foreman said I'm firmly sticking with Bivol. He has so many tools and so many ways to beat you. Yeah. Nothing is Original. What do I think about Junto Nakatani? Ceiling wise, he's looking really good. I think he's going to be very good in any division he's still tall in. If he's tall and rangy for the division, good. If he moves up to the point where the guys are starting to catch up with him height wise, I think it'll be a different issue. A whole different can of worms. Just like I don't really like Emmanuel Navarrete going to 135. We'll see if he wins his first fight against Dennis Baranchek, right? But some of those other guys at 135, like, I don't think I would like his chances against William Zepeda. I think William Zepeda might blow him out of the pocket. You know what I'm saying? And that's usually what Navarrete likes to do, overwhelm the guy with activity. What would William Zepeda versus Navarrete at 135 look like? Zepeda would have, I believe, a height advantage. The reach would be close, if not, because Navarrete's got a 72-inch reach, which was crazy at 122, still crazy at 126, a little less crazy, but still crazy at 130. 135, you're just starting to fight bigger and bigger guys. So Junto Nakatani, as long as he's at his division, maybe another division up, somewhere 118, maybe 122. I like Junto Nakatani. 126, start playing with danger. You know what I mean? But yeah, we wrapping this one up. Yeah, thanks for sticking with me, y'all. Nothing is original. Thank you. Jay Foreman, thank you. MAW, nothing is original. James Backlick, Heart of Broward County, thank you. Lee Van, David Eister, EK, Nate Johnson, TMG. Yeah, thank you guys. Stan Tucker, I know, is in the house, the AKA Dad, and that means Mom's watching. Love you guys. Miami Kid J, thank you for coming through. Let's see. Hot Facts with Robert Reese, my boy from way back. Thank you. Thank you. And we got to chop it up sooner than later, too. Karma Serene is in the house. Thank you. Yeah, I know this one ran long, but yeah, there was, a lot to talk about. Jesus, thank you for coming through. I think I said EK, but if not, EK. And if I did, still, what's up, EK? Thank you again. Caesar, thank you for coming through. 07, keep it real. Thank you for coming through. Yeah, I want to thank you guys. Benny Bronx. Yeah. Sup Swoles. Thank you for coming through. My man, fam. Got family in the house. Understand me. Yeah, thank you for coming through. Big Surge. Thank you. And enjoy the fights this weekend. I know it's not one of the best fight cards. 2 mismatches. Those guys, I'm going to probably do a preview. I might combine both fights in one video and just do a preview on both. But both guys are like either way over the hill. Francis Barthélemy, he did look good in that fight against Gary Antoine Russell. Again, he knocked Antoine Russell down, but he hasn't fought since that fight. And he had a long spell of inactivity before that fight. And then Thomas Delorme was a 140 guy who's going to be fighting Vergil at 154. So it's like, I like that that Jose Ramirez is signing with Golden Boy. I hope Golden Boy keeps him busy. I like that Vergil Ortiz is going to be fighting his second fight in just a few months. I like that. I don't like either of these B-side guys' chances this coming weekend, though. Franco H, thank you for coming through. Upheaval 963, thank you. But yeah. Yeah, we out, y'all. I'm Woog. Thanks for coming in.